Hello everybody, my name is Ratnos, and welcome to my 10.1 Gear Systems Crash Course Training Overview thing. So this video is going to be aimed at somebody who's been living under a rock, but wants to hit the ground running at the start of 10.1. I'm going to explain all of the things happening with the gear systems. Primarily, it's a new upgrade system that we're looking at, but I'm also going to talk about the loot that comes from the raid and from dungeons, and the crafted gear, and kind of all of the implications of all these things working together. If this looks like an overwhelming amount of information, the TLDR is that Valor upgrades are going away, and the new upgrade system is much more powerful, will let you get much more gear upgraded much earlier into this patch, and lets you upgrade gear from normal or heroic raid all the way up to either high heroic or low mythic item level, respectively. So it's a big, in my opinion, upgrade to quality of life and power for players early in the patch. There's a lot of numbers and a lot of colors on the screen right now, and I know that looks scary and it's a spreadsheet, but it's really not that bad. I think this system is actually really sweet when you dig into kind of the implications of it. So what is the lore behind the system? Well, basically, there are crests and flight stones that you can use in place of Valor to upgrade your gear from M+. But you can also use them now to upgrade gear that drops from the raid as well. Flight stones are basically Primal Chaos or Artifact Power or any of those sorts of currencies that just drop from anything you can do. Pretty much, you'll get a boatload of flight stones. There is a cap on how many flight stones you can hold at once, but there's not a cap on how much you can earn in a given time, and the cap for how many you can hold at once is quite high. So realistically, my expectation for this currency is that it will be functionally not one of the ones that limits you if you're a player that plays a lot. Early in the patch, it's not going to be the currency that you're worried about, and if it ever is a currency that you're short on, you can farm it easily and infinitely. The other currency, though, that you need to use to upgrade gear is crests, Shadow Flame crests, and these are the system that is more likely to be limiting, although even there, it's still a very, very generous amount compared when you compare how many upgrades you can do with crests per week to how much you could do with Valor per week back in the day. It is night and day. So you can earn 150 crest fragments per crest type per week, and it takes 15 fragments to make one crest. Now, there are 4 different types of crests. Basically, there's the LFR ones, the normal ones, the heroic ones, and the mythic ones. Those drop from those difficulties of the raid, and they also drop from 2 to 5 keys, 6 to 10 keys, 11 to 15 keys, or 16 or higher keys, respectively, as well. They also have cute little dragon names, such as Whelpling's Shadowflame Crest for the LFR ones, Drake's Shadowflame Crest for the normal ones, Worm's Shadowflame Crests for the heroic runs, and Aspect's Shadowflame Crests for the mythic ones. I'm going to refer to them as LFR, normal, and heroic, and mythic crests in this video because it makes more sense for my brain. If your brain works the other way, I'm terribly sorry. You'll have to do what you can. I've used some color coding in here to try and kind of help brains comprehend as well, but it does take a little bit to get used to, but that's basically the way that those work. In terms of how many fragments you can get LFR and normal fragments from the outdoor world, and you can start earning them May 2nd, or if you're in the wrong region, May 3rd. You can start earning those fragments from just outdoor world stuff, and then they also drop from LFR and normal, and of course heroic and mythic ones can't start dropping until the May 9th or May 10th weeks begins. You can earn 150 fragments per type per week, and you can catch up to that cap if you missed it. So if I earn 100 fragments week 1, I can earn 200 week 2 and catch up to the 300 total that I would have been able to earn. There are also some one-time fragments that can be earned from quests. I think mostly LFR and normal ones at that level, but there may be some mythic and heroic ones that you can also earn, and those don't count towards the cap. So you don't have to worry about overcapping using those or running into the cap using those. But either way, that's a lot, right? That's 10 crests per week. Now, every upgrade step is going to cost a crest if you're upgrading past into the 400s. You want to upgrade up to 398, it's not going to cost you crests. You can do that with just flight stones, and that's like the very intro entry-level gear from the open world. Obviously, this is like worse than Forbidden Reach gear that you can grind right now. So But as soon as you want to start upgrading into the higher levels, it's going to cost you crests to do so everywhere along the way. So how many crests? Well, it depends on which specific thing you're doing. So this is where you can use this little table thing that I made here. But some notes is that I've color-coded the upgrades to here. That kind of shows you which upgrade track the item is going to drop at. Because basically the way it works is that if my item drops at eye level 405, it's going to only be possible to upgrade it to 424. But if my item drops at 415, I can actually upgrade it to 437. If my item drops at 428, I can upgrade it to 441. Because they're on different upgrade tracks, right? If I drop something that's 411, it will be Veteran 4 out of 8, and then I can upgrade that to Veteran 5 out of 8, 6 out of 8, 7 out of 8, and 8 out of 8, and it'll be 424. But then it will be 8 out of 8. It will be done being upgradable. Whereas if I drop an item at 415, only 4 item levels higher than that 411, it will be on the Champion upgrade track, and I can instead take it all the way up to 437, obviously much higher. Now there's some weirdness here that it basically works the same way 3 times pretty consistently, but then at the mythic level, there's a lower ceiling. The mythic items only ever go up to 441, and so you can see that this champion track has 8 upgrade levels. The hero track, which is the highest one, only has 5 upgrade levels, and then it stops. You can't upgrade into like the high level mythic. You can only upgrade to the level of the first few bosses on mythic. You can't upgrade higher than that using this system. And notably, that means that the mythic upgrade crests are going to be a less limiting resource than the heroic upgrade crests for most players, because a lot of gear that you're going to get is going to require multiple heroic crests to upgrade, but only ever can require 1 mythic crest to upgrade. So an example of that is if you can farm keys. So say if you can farm 19 or 20 keys, you'll get 431 gear, which costs you 2 heroic crests and 1 mythic crest to upgrade. And you can bring that all the way up to 441. Obviously, you could not use the mythic crest if you want, and you could just use 2 heroic crests and bring it to 437. But it would be possible to bring it up to 441 if you wanted to fully upgrade it, is what this chart is trying to say. And this is the end of dungeon loot, by the way, over here. I guess it's not clarified. Maybe it will be by the time this spreadsheet actually comes out. That probably is worth doing. And so the takeaway from this is, even though you can earn 10 crests of any type per week, you can see pretty quickly how, especially if you're getting gear at 424, you'll run out of these heroic crests really quickly. So that, I think, is the biggest takeaway I would have. If you're a player who's capable of doing 19s or 20s, they are a lot better than 15s and 16s, especially because those 15 and 16 gear can only go up to 437, whereas 17, 18, 19, 20 can go up to 441. But even doing the 19s and 20s versus doing the 17s and 18s is going to save you a heroic crest on all of your upgrades. And those heroic crests in the first 2 weeks are a limiting resource. That is absolutely going to be something I would recommend. When possible, you should view those crests as probably the ones that are you're most likely to run out of. Now, you can downgrade the mythic crests into heroic ones if you want to, but the mythic crests do have another important use, which is for crafted gear. Crafted gear takes a Shadow Flame Spark, which you'll earn a Shadow Flame Spark on the first week, and then you'll earn one every 2 weeks thereafter by doing a weekly quest. But you get a bonus half spark on the first week, so you get one on week 1, 1 on week 3, which is the second week of the raid, 1 on week 5, which is the 4th week of the raid, and so on. And you can use the crafted gear basically is 3 item levels higher this patch than it was last patch, relatively to the content. And you can use 4 mythic crests or 3 heroic crests to make an optional reagent with an enchanter that basically does what Primal Infusions did last patch. So you can use that to then upgrade your gear up to 447 with the crafted gear. Now, it's still going to take a spark to do this, so you need 1 spark and 4 mythic crests to make an eye level 447 crafted piece. But you can do this on the first week of the raid, right? Because you're going to have your first spark already from the last week, and then you can do it again on the second week of the raid because you'll get your second spark then, and then you can do it for the 3rd time on the 4th week of the raid, the 5th week of the patch, if that makes sense. So, because of the way this works out, and because of the analysis here that I think the heroic crests are going to be the limiting factor, I think you should avoid making the heroic enchanted crests, and you should instead focus on just using the mythic ones, because they're a lot higher item level, right? This is 10 item levels higher of the crafted gear, and you're using these mythic crests that can only be used for 1 upgrade each, right? Each item that you upgrade can only ever use 1 mythic crest you only have 14, item slots on your character, so you can only ever need 14 mythic crests for upgrading your gear, which means that past that, downgrading them to heroic crests or upgrading crafted gear with them is going to be the best possible use of them. Now, you may be saying, but what if I get a better, statted piece? Well, the system has some built-in quality of life with upgrades. Basically, if you have a better shoulders, right? Say I have 441 shoulders, and then I drop some 431 shoulders that I want to upgrade, and because they're better stats. Well, they actually will cost me 50% flight stones and 0 crests as long as I'm upgrading to that item level that I already have. So as long as I have the higher item level, I can upgrade for very cheap on this character. Very low flight stone cost and no crest cost. Very, very nice quality of life here. This doesn't work for one-handers, rings, or trinkets in the way that you would hope it would, obviously, which is good. It shouldn't work that way. But it looks at your second highest item level for the purposes of those things. Although with one-handers, you can get around it if you have a better two-hander or if you have a better shield or something as well. But basically, it looks at your, like, if you're trying to upgrade a ring to 447, or to 441, rather, and you already have a 447 ring from Raid, you need another good ring before the ring upgrades will be cheap for you on that character. Now, there's some confusion about alt catch-up that people have been talking about. There is some alt catch-up help here, which is the Flightstone cost reduction. Again, Flightstones are like that Primal Chaos thing that you can get a bunch of. That applies on your alts as well. So if my main has a 441 shoulders, and my alt gets some 437, 431, whatever shoulders, and wants to upgrade them, that is going to be cheaper in terms of Flightstones, but it's still going to cost you crests. So there's no weird exploit case where you're going to want to, like, level up gear on your alts first in the first week and then get around the crest cap on your main. That's not going to work. That crest cap does not work for you can't get a benefit from doing that. But you can save some flight stones on your alts, which is nice. Okay, so let's look again a little bit more at these item levels in particular. And make some plans. If you're interested, there's this really cool Raiders Survival Guide by Larius, who's been putting out some good guide content like this the past few times. I have a few slight disagreements with the recommendations here, but I think for the most part, it's a really good blueprint to getting yourself very good gear in the first few weeks. The thing that I think it's leaving out is tier raid trinkets and very rare items, which have some ramifications for how you should play that I want to cover in my video here and in my chart here. So that's why I've got all these lower difficulties charted out as well, even if you're a Mythic Raider. These are absolutely relevant. So first of all, just looking at these item level charts, these are pretty much the same item levels from End of Dungeon that you might be used to from last time. The Great Vault item levels are actually bumped up a little bit. And the thing to note is that Great Vault gear is very good. Like, even if you're just doing +8 keys, your Great Vault gear can get upgraded all the way up to low Mythic item level. Very, very powerful. Now, you might be used to that from Valor, because under the old Valor system, basically, you know how you're getting 10 crests of any type per week? The Valor cap was pretty close to, like, 3 crests per week and not extra of different types. So you're getting way more of those per week. But an upside of the Valor system was that you could upgrade gear from a +2 all the way up to the highest level, right, 441 equivalent. That is no longer the case. This is a nerf, basically, to the system, and it's a nerf that's going to be felt the most, I think, at this level, where previously, if you did an 11 key, you could upgrade that gear eventually to 415, which is 441 equivalent. Now that's not going to be possible. Now, if you want to get the max eye-level stuff out of M+, you need to be doing at least 17s or 18s, and if you want to be doing it at full crest efficiency, you need to be doing the 19s and the 20s. How about the raid gear? So the raid gear is a little bit more simple. You notice there's kind of monotone colors here, a little bit less of the colors changing, with the one exception being the very rare items from the last 2 bosses are actually on the next difficulties upgrade tracks because they're so high item level. And that has been confirmed in one of these FAQs by Blizzard as well, as that's how they're going to work. So in terms of the item level you can get out of LFR, you can upgrade LFR gear all the way up to 424, but it does cost obviously a bunch of LFR and normal crests. You can upgrade heroic gear or normal gear all the way up to 437, though. That is the biggest thing for me out of this system, that I think the implications of this for a lot of players haven't been really internalized yet. But especially for tier pieces, this is really, really big. Now, obviously, any normal piece that you're going to take up to 437 is going to cost you at least 4 heroic crests and some normal crests as well, generally too. So this is a big sink for those heroic crests. Remember, you get 10 per week, so 4 is a lot of that cap, right? 4 is almost half of your crests for the week from heroic difficulty. But 3 weeks into the patch, I think week 1 and week 2, the heroic crests are gonna be a very limiting resource. Week 3 is the week where I think you're gonna start to be like, okay, I don't need any more of these crests. I have all the ones that I need. And week 4, you'll definitely have all the ones you need if you're earning up to the cap. And again, you can catch up to the cap if you missed some on previous weeks. So in the first few weeks, maybe you're not going to spend all your heroic crests on this, but I think you might, because tier is really powerful. Some of these trinkets are really powerful. Getting a Kazara trinket all the way up to 437. The mythic Kazara trinket is 447, which is really good. The heroic one can upgrade to 441, which is good. But the normal one can upgrade to 437, which is really close to the mythic and heroic versions of that trinket. And so looking at normal raid and the upgrade track here as something to plan getting some of your gear from, especially your tier, is a really powerful thing to do. And it might be worth saying, you know what? I'm going to try and do this, right? I'm going to try and get some gear from my Great Vault, try and get some gear from like mythic bosses so that I don't have to use heroic crests upgrading gears in those slots. And then I'll use those extra heroic crests that I've saved myself in the first or second week to make my tier high item level from normal. I think that is something that absolutely is going to be worth considering if you're a player that is venturing into normal, heroic, and mythic in the early weeks. If you're not venturing into mythic in the early weeks, honestly, I think this is even better. Upgrading normal tier to 437 is really, really powerful. And all it takes is doing normal raid and then doing plus 11 keys. Doing normal raid and then plus 11 keys, and you can get 437 gear. I mean, that's insanely powerful and insanely useful to be aware of. So that pattern, I believe, is powerful enough that everybody except for guilds running multiple splits that might just not even need to bother with normal, but AOTC cutting edge guilds even should be looking at using a lot of these normal gear with these upgrades. And any lower level, it gets even better to be doing that. So really, really powerful. Again, the fact that the heroic to mythic upgrade, right? This mythic upgrade is only 1 eye level jump higher than the 437 stuff, means that relatively this 437 thing is a really big power spike at the lower end. So 441 not much better than 437. So very, very, very good stuff there. Now, the tier has some other interesting changes from previous seasons as well that I wanted to cover in this too. You will earn 1 free heroic tier Omni token, which means it's a token that you can redeem for tier in any slot, any of the tier pieces. I guess I don't. Yeah, any of them, right? Any of the tier pieces can be got with this heroic Omni token. So that is really, really big. And you can get this from AOTC, right? From clearing the raid on heroic. From 2.2k Mythic Plus score, I think, or maybe 2.4k. I think it's 2.2k. I wouldn't lie in a spreadsheet, probably. It's one of those numbers. Or 1.8k in PvP. Really, especially that Mythic Plus score, on the second week, that bar is... I don't want to say it's like super low, but I will say it's a much easier way to get heroic tier than has existed in the past. And it's a way that didn't exist in the past to get heroic tier. Now, you can only earn 1 Omni token this way. But you can also earn Omni tokens from Sarkareth. So unlike Vault of the Incarnates had 5 tier bosses. Well, Aberrus the Shattered Crucible has 6. And Sarkareth will drop a tier token that can be used to turn into any tier piece at that difficulty. Really, really powerful. I think it's 1 per 10 players as well, just like the other tier tokens do as well, which means it's really, really big. Like, that is extra tier out of the raid from Sarkareth, and also it means that you can put that tier on somebody and they can make 4-piece much more easily, whereas before you would have this tough thing where it's like, okay, this person has 3-piece, which means 3 of the 5 bosses don't actually drop tier for them anymore, right? They need to land it from one of the last 2. Well, Sarkareth can always fill in that gap. Really, really strong thing from Sarkareth as well. And again, that works on normal as well. That works on normal, and you can upgrade it all the way up to 437, and that works on LFR, and you can upgrade it to 424. Now, obviously, the LFR Sarkareth isn't going to open for like a month or something like that, so I wouldn't worry too much about the LFR implications of this, but the normal implications are huge. Getting normal tier and upgrading it to 437 and getting one free heroic tier token from 2.2k score. What this means is that you probably will have like 2 more tier tokens on the second week than you did last patch if you're a player that sets foot into normal and heroic raid, even if you don't full clear heroic, even if you're just clearing as long as you're getting that enough score to get this Omni token. That's tremendously big. And if you're in a high level guild, that's going to be something you're going to play around. And I think what it means is that high level guilds, 4-piece for most players week 1 is going to be easy, and it's going to be guaranteed on week 2. Whereas before it was like 4-piece for a lot of players on week 1 required a bunch of painful splits. Now those painful splits are only required if you want to quibble about your 4-piece being on everybody instead of only like 16 out of 20 players, and if you want to make sure that it's 441 instead of 437, which is not a big deal for most people. So what else is happening here? The bot, in terms of how many fragments you're going to get, if you do a full clear of the raid, you're going to earn 100 of your 150 fragment. 100 of your 150 fragments for the week on that difficulty, which means you get almost all of your cap from a clear in that difficulty. So just by clearing normal and heroic, you will earn 100 of your 150, right? And then you only need to do a few keys. Timed keys give you 12 fragments. Depleted keys give you 5. So if you do a full clear of heroic, and then you do 5 keys, one of which is depleted, at plus 11, you will get your full cap of heroic crests for the week. And same with mythic on plus 16 or higher keys. So the fragments are very farmable, especially if you're doing a full clear of normal and heroic. You shouldn't need to go into and target farm these crests for very long on these difficulties. This survival guide recommends that being like the first thing you do is just farming those low level keys for the crests. My recommendation is, if you can get away with it, if you're in a guild that can clear heroic without needing the gear that this gives you, that's not a good use of your time if possible then, and try and farm the higher level content and get most of your normal and heroic fragments from those difficulties, right? From those difficulties of the raid. But if you need to, if that power will help you clear in the first few weeks, then this guide has the right idea as well. Okay, what other stuff is there to talk about? There is the new embellishments as well coming in the new patch. New embellishments are on the way, and some of them look quite good. There's, if you go to this sheet, you can click on this link, and that'll bring you to a page that gives you all of these embellishments that were like when they were data mined. Notably, there's some shoulders that have some cool toxic effect that do a bunch of damage. There's a cloak that is potentially quite interesting for tanks, giving you a shield when you drop below 30% health. And also, Elemental Lariat is being nerfed to a lower duration unless you have all your sockets, basically. But still probably quite a good embellishment, and especially if you still have all your sockets, or if you get lucky with sockets next season, that's likely to still be quite a great embellishment for a lot of people. You can upgrade your Season 1 Spark gear instead of crafting Season 2. People ask me this a lot, and it's tough because I want to answer yes, but it's weird because answering yes, it doesn't matter. It doesn't save you anything important. It like saves you, 3 shimmering clasps in a Ephemerald to craft an upgrade versus to craft from scratch. It costs you the same amount of crests and sparks and stuff to upgrade versus to craft from scratch. So the only thing that upgrading a Season 1 piece versus crafting a Season 2 piece will save you is gold, a little bit. A lot of gold if you had an alchemical flavor packet. It is actually really worth if you have an alchemical flavor packet piece to upgrade, of course. But anything else, it's really just saving you a tiny bit of gold. So not something to worry too much about. Okay. The final thing I want to talk about, I guess, is just these very rare items from the raid. As part of this kind of crash course cheat sheet thing, you might be wondering, what are the very rare items from the raid? And I just want to go through these real quick. So the Kazara Trinket is a stat stick. It's a crit primary stat stick. It's a primary stat stick that gives you a crit and leech proc. It has this on use, but the on use, it says it looks like it does damage, but really all it does is it's like a fall damage thing. So you can't use this, right? If I try to use this trinket on the ground, it doesn't do anything. You can only use it while airborne. But if I do this, I go bang, pow, and smash on things that I'm landing on. So potentially useful for like Magmarax or something, but mostly you should think of this trinket as the primary stat and the crit leech proc. Rashok has a two-handed polearm that is an agi polearm that has an on use, giving your auto attacks some lava waves there. It's a pretty small value on use, but it's still obviously a very good item for its item level and for its stat budget, because that on use does not cost you anything of the stat budget, so it is a abyss item, but it's not like insane power or anything like that. Then Echo of Neltharion has these 3 class trinkets. They're not really class trinkets. They're each awarded to a set of classes. The Warrior Paladin Mage DH and Evoker one is a crit trinket that procs off of AoE spells and abilities to give you an absolute boatload of strength, or primary stat rather, but also increase your damage taken by 5% for 18 seconds. Now, this is a good effect. For tanks, it's actually, like for tanks, that much primary stat plus a 5% damage increase, that is kind of a wash in terms of how much DR you effectively have, because primary stat gives you a lot of defense on most tank specs. So this is a really good trinket for everybody. Obviously, taking 5% increased damage if you're a squishy DPS on some fights is maybe going to be something that you get looked at suspiciously with, but, you know, this is still a really, really powerful trinket. The one for Hunters, Shaman, Warlocks, and Monks is a haste trinket. The Shamans, the Warlocks, rejoicing. The Monks are like, why is this a haste trinket? I hate this. But it's a haste trinket that says you get a stack of Domineering Arrogance randomly. That's just, you can randomly proc getting a stack of that. And then using your major cooldown gives you strength or gives you primary stat per stack and reduces your movement speed by 10% for 10 seconds. Pretty small movement speed slow, not a big deal. And it's also controllable because it's when you press your major cooldown. And basically the way it works is that because it gains stacks like this, if your major cooldown is on a 3-minute cooldown, you're going to get 3 times more stacks than somebody who's using it on a 1-minute cooldown, but they're going to get it 3 times more often. So in theory, it kind of balances out. In practice, this is really, really good for specs like Demonology Warlock that get a lot of value when they press their major cooldown and do almost all their damage then. And also, that spec happens to love haste, and this trinket gives haste. So if you're a Loot Council member, you will hand these trinkets to your Warlocks as the first order of business. And then finally, there's the Rogue Priest DK Druid one that is a verse trinket that says your debuffs, your harmful debuffs, and periodic spells and abilities have a chance to give you a boatload of primary stat and also take a dot, a small shadow dot. So obviously these specs, one thing they all have in common is that they do, you know, periodic effects, dots and stuff. So that's the proc on this one. And yeah, this one's also strong. Again, that dot, you know, like Corrupting Rage File, you're going to look at some death logs and you're going to be suspicious of it, but it's so much primary stat, you gotta use this thing. And then finally, Sarkareth has a very rare cloak that is called the Voice of the Silent Star, which is a cloak with no stamina on it, that also says, whenever nearby allies take damage, the voice has a chance to beckon you. Upon hearing its call 10 times, you fully submit to its influence, stealing 125 of the 4 nearest allies' lowest secondary stats, and giving you the stolen amount, plus a boatload, to your highest secondary stat for 8 seconds. Now, people look at this as being quite toxic, but realistically, it's taking their lowest stats, and it's taking 125 each. I guess it'll take more on the mythic version of this cloak, but yeah, it'll take a small amount of their lowest stat, which is presumably the least important for them, and it'll give you an absolute boatload of your highest stat. So even if it steals like verse from somebody, it's going to give you your highest stat. It looks at the amount that it stole plus this flat amount, but it doesn't actually look at the stat that it stole. It just gives you your highest secondary stat only. And so this is also just really, really, really powerful. The downside of this is much less the stealing stats and is much more that it's a cloak without stamina on it, so your EHP gets lower. But even still, this is really, really, really big. The amount of the ratio on how much stat it gives you versus how much it takes from the other people is so, so good. So really powerful items, and it's the sort of thing we're looking at farming these very rare items on normal and upgrading them to 437, 441 for the Sarkareth Cloak on normal. Really, really, really good. Of course, if you get that thing on Heroic, it's above the item level of the upgrade track. It's already 444, so you can't even upgrade it. So Still, really, really, really strong items. There are also some good raid trinkets that aren't very rare that are potentially worth grabbing. And again, target farming them on normal, and then upgrading them to 437 instead of 441 if you can't get them on heroic that week. A very good use of time and of crests if you have extra crests, and if you don't want to use all your crests on upgrading M+ gear and getting those up to 441. This guide gives you a different kind of take on this that will tell you to really focus on just upgrading this +19, +20 gear and maximizing the value of your heroic and mythic crests. But the problem with doing this is you might upgrade some, like, you might not have good M+ trinkets for your class. You might be upgrading chest pieces, shoulders by doing this. You don't want to upgrade chest pieces and shoulders because those are your tier slots, right? You want to not use any upgrades on those tier slots, because what if you drop those things at tier? You know, obviously if you drop tier, you can upgrade. If you drop normal tier and you've upgraded non-tier shoulders, you can upgrade for the cheap cost, right? Of, you know, no need for flight stones or crests because you have a higher item level in that slot. But say you drop that from mythic. Say your first mythic experiments kill drops you tier, right? If you've already used crests on upgrading something in that spot, like, ooh, that's a rough thing to have used your early crests on. And I think it might be better to instead use your early crests on upgrading tier that drops from normal. These are two good ideas. Either one will work, but that's my current thought on the way the system works, at least for my guild and for players in my guild. Your guild may have a completely different plan of how you're going to attack this and which, you know, when you're going to go into these different difficulties. So of course, I just want to arm you with the information here. This system is really powerful. It's really, really big. I hope this video wasn't too confusing. I know it's gone a little bit long here. I know there's going to be a bunch of comments that are like, because I'm reading through the Reddit post about this system when it first got announced, there were so many people that were like, oh, this turns me off. It's just too much info. And I can see how it looks that way, but I swear, like, the more that I think about the system, the more I'm excited about how it's going to play out. And I think it's just a really, really big power spike, especially. I can't get over just how good the normal gear is with this upgrade system in place. So that is the video. This spreadsheet will be linked in the description below, so you can refer to it and send it to your guildies. They can also click on this if they want to get linked to this video down here, this very video. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Do hope it helped. If it did help, you can help me by hitting that subscribe button down there. I'm very close to 100,000 subscribers, and if I can get there, YouTube will mail me a plaque that will do wonders for my ego. So, we'll trade offer there. One video for one subscribe. Hope you enjoyed this video. More coming soon about 10.1. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.